Police believe 85-year-old Eva Burnett was making her way home when she was hit by a car soon after alighting from a bus on Glebe Road late yesterday. Motorists found the woman lying in the gutter adjacent to the Neil Terrace intersection just after 7. It had been raining heavily, a fact police say may have contributed to the accident. The wet road and flooding gutters left police little information to work with.
Information from the medical staff at John Hunter Hospital indicate that the injuries she sustained were consistent with her being struck by a motor vehicle.
At this stage, can you use any assistance?
We certainly could. Obviously, we would like anyone who had any knowledge whatsoever of the incident to come forward. At this stage we have no indication of a vehicle, any description. We don't even know exactly what direction that vehicle was travelling.
And a 9-year-old schoolboy who was dragged by his bag alongside a bus at Seaham yesterday remains in a serious condition in the intensive care unit of the John Hunter Hospital. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Newcastle Council has been keen to wrap up the Lord Mayor's earthquake appeal, which was established after the 1989 earthquake. The Supreme Court recently paved the way for the appeal to be used to help with other emergencies. However, it found that the majority of the $1.2 million must be kept in the Hunter region. In keeping with that, local government representatives have been pushing for the funds to go to the area's rescue helicopter. Today, that proposal received support from the Premier. In a letter to member for Newcastle Bryce Gaudry, Mr Fay states, "In view of the excellent rescue and retrieval work performed by the service, I would support a portion of the funds being made available to assist the Newcastle Helicopter Rescue Service." Head of the service, Alan McMahon, was elated.
To be able to provide a better service for the community, what we're looking to do is to enhance the service by another backup aircraft. And we're looking for the long term, so those monies would be vital for us for the long term.
While the proposal has the backing of the Premier and local members, it's up to the new trustees to ultimately decide where the money will go, and that probably won't happen for another couple of months, because as yet they haven't been chosen. With the winding up of the earthquake appeal, 5 new trustees will be nominated. That's expected to occur toward the end of May. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The first to fall foul of the break were the boaties. A sandbar less than 50 metres off the beach got the better of some crews, destroying any hopes they had of making the finals. Their chance of an Australian medal finished in just a few seconds, and for some it was pretty hard to swallow. Defending Ironman champ Guy Andrews also knows about an early exit. He failed to make the cut in his heat.
Yeah, just the realisation when you cross the line, it's sort of a bad feeling in the pit of your stomach.
Guy, so what's left now? Do you try and salvage something from the titles?
We've got a really good board relay team, our board rescue team and a taplin team with Tugan Surf Club, so I'll be putting 100% into that.
It's estimated the crowd will swell to around 10,000 tomorrow, but the weather will determine just how many people get to the beach. Throughout today, intermittent showers kept the crowd scurrying for cover or forcing people to drag out the winter woolies. One competitor who felt the cold more than most is Rob Barnes. Rob is one of only 6 representing the Northern Territory and the only person from Darwin Surf Club to make the titles.
I mean, it's not too many clubbies I know that have to swim around in the water knowing there's a croc in there. Sharks are one thing, but crocs can also chase you up the beach. So you've got to be a bit faster and a bit swifter, so we pride ourselves in knowing that we can get away from a croc if we have to.
One guy determined to make the trip worthwhile is Yasu Kugari. The 26-year-old is leading a surf team from Japan and today qualified for the finals of the Open Beach Flags.
And day after tomorrow I got a final and just beach flags. So I'm so lucky. I'm so glad to be here.
And for the first time, surf lifesaving will be held under lights. Tomorrow night until 9 o'clock, competitors will come up against each other in march past, beach relay and sprint events. Paul Harrigan can't believe it, and keen football fans find it equally hard to get a grip on. Prop is the leading try scorer in the Winfield Cup. In just 2 games, Harrigan has scored 3 tries. For someone who started the year without much pre-season training, it's almost too good to be true. But earlier this week, the fitness shortfall reared its ugly head.
It is a concern because of limited preparation. The fitness isn't up where it should be, but hopefully that I'll just get through this state of injuries, which I've had a fair run now for about 3 or 4 months, and I'll hit a purple patch.
Harrigan intends training tonight, but is confident he will be on the plane to Canberra tomorrow.
I've caught all the technical side of things. It's just been basically the sheer fitness, and I've probably missed running through a few sets of 6 with a few ploys we have in mind for Canberra, but I haven't missed out in that respect. The main concern would be the fitness, where I've missed out on a couple of fitness sessions, but I'm quite certain on Sunday I'll have a fair session.
And for the first time in years, all the Newcastle teams will travel away this weekend to play at the same ground. From the Harold Matthews squad to first grade, they will all go round at Bruce Stadium. Trevor Hendy knew just how lucky he was to be included in the final after yesterday's protest that forced officials to give him a start. The thought of an unknown taking the title seemed to spur Hendy onto an impressive performance. He led from start to finish and rarely looked to be in any trouble. The same couldn't be said for the rest of the field, pounded in a whopping shore break. Everything slotted together for Hendy. He picked up an easy swell back to the beach and rode his way into history to win the Australian title for an amazing 6th time. Craig Hackett from Northcliffe finished second, with Nathan Meyer from Surfers Paradise third. The Mercer brothers and state champion Drew Blatchford finished well outside the placings. The ladies' event was completely dominated by the surf, the waves directly altering the lead on several occasions. But little Carla Gilbert always seemed to make it through. It finished as back-to-back titles for Gilbert, with Reen Corbett second and Samantha O'Brien third.
Back from his win at Bathurst's Golden Crown Carnival on Saturday night, Bastille Beggar has earned a 10-day spell in the home paddock. Jason Proctor, who seems to be a natural in the business, still has the sounds of victory in his ears.
When we came down the straight with about 50 to go, the feeling was sensational. I realised I'd won the crown because I thought I had everything beaten. My bloke found another leg and it was great, yeah.
Almost 20 years of hard work is finally paying off for the Proctors. Bastille Beggar is 3rd generation, bred, broken and trained by the family. The horse's name no longer does his earning capacity justice.
Well, he's only had the 9 starts and he's picked up heading towards 100,000 now, so he's been a good money spinner, and I'm sure you'll hear plenty of that name in the future.
The family keep a dozen paces on its property at Camberwell outside Singleton and regularly travels hundreds of kilometres to race fixtures, many at Sydney's Harold Park. For now, the Proctors are happy to savour their success in the Hunter, but in the future may be drawn closer to Sydney.
This apparently is where I'll take my seat initially.
Tomorrow is the day I join the team.
But why a team of so many men, so few women?
We're still a curiosity. It's a little bit of the Bronwyn, Carmen and Cheryl show at the moment.
In Newcastle today, addressing a fundraising luncheon for the city's youth service, Cheryl Curnow was pondering the many reasons why there are so few women in politics.
One of the things that women say to me is, well, yeah, I'm tempted. I think I could do it, but why would I want to? Why would I want to go down there with all those men shouting and pointing at each other in a very confrontationist way? And another reason, I think, is that the political parties, particularly the major ones, haven't really reformed their processes seriously.
Despite the recent victories of Bronwyn Bishop and Carmen Lawrence, there are only 30 women in federal parliament. Men number 107.
Men through social conditioning have been less willing to share power. They haven't seen women's role as being sort of on an equal, on a par with theirs.
While Senator Curnow is obviously the exception to the rule, she says it can still be tough going.
Whenever I've had a few doubts, whenever I've looked at my daughter sleeping when I've had to leave early in the morning, I've sort of been propelled onwards by reminding myself that if women don't do it, if our voices aren't heard, then Australia is a poorer place because of that.
The day started on a high note as the youngsters from the Waratah Orthopaedic School and the Stewart Centre were given a bird's-eye view of Australia's premier fighting plane, the F-18. Then it was on to a bright, loud and wet introduction to Williamtown's firefighting forces. The next act for this private party nearly blew hats off as a RAF helicopter hovered into view. The new recruits were enlisted to become the Air Force's youngest crew. 7-year-old Nathan Johnson swapping his wheelchair for the pilot's seat to become squadron leader for the day. The special visit was organised as a treat, but officers agree they received just as much satisfaction as the children they entertained.
I think the look on the face of a child who pressed a button in the fire engine and when the sirens went off, the smile went all the way down to his big toes.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
This is why the pupils at Floraville Public like to spend Sundays at school. They've been producing acts for a competition called Odyssey of the Mind, which encourages creative problem solving.
They do drama, and in the case of the problems chosen by our senior teams here, there were also a scientific component of it in which children built a structure, and it had certain criteria that they had to meet for the structure, and once they met that, they then had to represent that in a dramatic form.
For the Year 6 team, that meant taking the tale of King Arthur and giving it a few modern touches.
We have a competition and there are 3 people, and King Arnie, who's King Arthur, he pulls the gun out of the rock and the structure breaks and the ping pong ball comes out, and that means that he's the magnificent ruler of the country.
It's a formula that worked. Year 6 took out second place at the Australian finals. Not to be outdone, Years 4 and 5 took out first place in their division, and the Year 3 teams scooped the pool, winning first and second places. All they need now is the money to go to the World Finals in the US in June.
The trickle of cars along Lenigan's Drive between Black Hill and Beresfield had grown to a steady flow by afternoon, with an expected flood of vehicles tonight. Police expect traffic delays on most of Newcastle's major arterial roads and have called on drivers to take their time, with driver reviver stops throughout the north for people who need a break.
Be patient, that's the main thing. Expect that your journey time is going to be increased over what you would normally expect, and certainly stop regularly, preferably every 2 hours, and have a break. Get out of the vehicle, walk around, refresh yourself, as they say, revive and survive.
70 patrol cars will work around the clock for the next 4 days, with a special emphasis on unmarked vehicles to catch offending drivers.
We're actually working a number of unmarked vehicles with police in plain clothes, and the idea is to catch those people who can't be caught, the more serious driving offences if you like, and the people that aren't caught by normal means.
The main causes of crashes, fatigue, alcohol and speeding will be targeted, along with people who refuse to wear seatbelts. Police say it's now up to drivers to make sure it's a safe and happy Easter. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Traffic leaving the freeway at Minmai uses Lenigan's Drive to reach the Pacific Highway. It was not built to take the huge number of vehicles. The federal government has long promised an alternative and today a commitment with the announcement of $2.7 million to begin preliminary work. Another two-lane road will be built parallel to Lenigan's, taking southbound traffic. Further along the road, the RTA will construct a flyover at the intersection of John Renshaw Drive and the New England Highway. Cessnock councillor Joel Fitzgibbon and his father Eric have long campaigned for the improvements, which should start within the next 3 months and take 2 years to complete.
Lenigan's Drive is a nightmare for the local residents there. The traffic light situation at that intersection I referred to is a nightmare for all motorists, but particularly a nightmare for Beresfield residents.
Residents are pleased with the news, but have questioned its timing.
We expect tonight that there will be great bank ups, and it is quite a coincidence that they make these announcements just before these peak periods, but nonetheless we're glad to see something done.
While the work at Lenigan's and John Renshaw Drive is a start, residents would have liked a further commitment to Stage 3, which includes the construction of another road to totally relieve Lenigan's Drive of freeway traffic. Jodie McKay, NBN News. After a $3.85 drop in the price of coking coal, the United Mine Workers launched a concerted effort of industrial action to try to convince coal companies and the federal government that the industry was being unnecessarily threatened. They were concerned a similar price might also be negotiated for steaming coal, of which the Hunter is the country's main supplier. Late this afternoon, a price of $34.35 US was announced by Shell Australia. That's $2 US less than last year. The unions say they are disappointed in the price, but believe it could have been far worse had they not taken the tough stand they did. Shell Australia, on the other hand, was relatively pleased with the result, comparing it to much greater price falls for both oil and natural gas. The unions have campaigned for the federal government to intervene in the price-setting process with the Japanese. In the Hunter today, Federal Resources Minister David Beddall would not rule that out. He has commissioned a 6-month study to look at the issue.
We've decided to have a study into the industry to pull together all the previous inquiries that have been put in place to have a look where the industry goes in the short term and then also the long term.
We started opening at 6 o'clock and we're just about sold out right now. It's been a very good day.
Caught up on last year's too.
Yeah, between 10 and 15%, I'd say, at this stage.
there's any babies here, I don't think we'll be getting anything. So
You might have to wind up at the fish shop later on as well.
probably, just like everyone else, yep.
The first stage of the four-day event centred around the foothills of Denman, the grasslands hiding only a few damaging rocks and surprisingly devoid of mud. In fact, dust was more of a problem, the local creeks not even offering a splash. The 250 to 500cc machines made easy work of the cattle country, but that in itself caused a problem. If riders made a checkpoint quicker than their allotted time, they were penalised, and if for some reason they were late, they again lost points. Competitors must be 18 to enter, but one rider has taken his love of the sport to an extreme. Soz Goddard from Bathurst is the oldest rider, clocking in at 67 years young. And it's determination like that that has one of the biggest spectator fields ever lining the course. Tucked away in vantage points through the bush, hundreds are watching the country's best throw their machines around. The Enduro continues tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Despite a big high tide, a good metre to metre and a half swell continued to roll in for this afternoon's final. Dave Nielsen went into the event as the third seed, but his confidence level had him running much higher than that. Ian Ross, on the other hand, just couldn't get his wave selection right. After watching Nielsen rack up some high points, Luke Faunce knew he had to pull something out of the bag, but he even left commentator Terry McDermott guessing. Jay Harris found out that even a number 2 seeding doesn't guarantee a good day in front of the judges. In the other age divisions, Nora Head's Wayne Seacombe took out the under-16s. And Dan Haggerty showed he is potentially a sponsor's dream with his winning performance in the under-18s. The Central Coast 1994 Championship will be decided after a 3-round competition scheduled to start next month. Today's stage began at Gosford and involved 4 loops around Summersby, Peats Ridge and Calga. And after yesterday's cancellation of the criterium around Vales Point Power Station due to the wet weather, teams had plenty of energy to expend and were setting an average speed of 80 kilometres an hour. The final day of competition tomorrow will involve a 91-kilometre race around Yarramalong and a time trial in the Wyong Township.
For Eugenie Wild, preparing young Daniel's bottle of milk is a regular affair. But last Thursday, the 30-year-old mother of two discovered milk was not the only thing she'd poured out.
Oh, well, I poured Daniel's bottle and went to give it to him and noticed there was a lump of wood floating on top of it. And I was a bit surprised.
The 2-litre container was bought from the local corner store. The piece of wood was 4 centimetres long, but because of the Easter break, it wasn't until Tuesday morning the Wilds informed authorities. Eugenie says the discovery could have easily led to a nasty accident.
My husband often just takes a drink out of the milk container without pouring it into a glass, and all we could think of was, what had happened if he'd actually done that and swallowed it.
The milk was manufactured at the Australian Cooperative Foods Hexham plant. The company today said the case was isolated and confirmed while the product was made locally, the containers were transported from elsewhere. A company spokesperson today said given the strict quality control and the number of filters used in the manufacturing process, it was hard to understand how the object found its way into the container. While the company was seriously investigating the matter, it said there was no cause for consumer concern. Councillors found out about the latest problem at a recent briefing session. Water was found 1.2 metres under land along Oakdale Road, earmarked for a waste transfer station to be used by residents on the eastern side of Lake Macquarie. The facility, a convenient alternative to an almost full redhead dump, would accept general household waste, which would be compacted and eventually transferred to a Wobber dump. But plans came adrift late last year when the company in charge of running the operation pulled out of the deal.
I'm asking myself, was the reason that the contractor pulled out the real one at all? It just begs the question. But as I said, you can't get an honest answer out of anybody. That just goes on.
Richard Fay says it's common knowledge among locals the water was there. He's concerned rubbish will be illegally dumped in bushland.
When you've got no facility at all, I'm going to ask the council what they're going to do to make certain that all of these areas are kept clean, because they're not under their control, they're under the National Parks and Wildlife.
What has most embarrassed council is that a geotechnical survey of the site should have been carried out, but appears to have been ignored by council's engineering department.
I've got to be perfectly frank, I'm disappointed, and whose fault that is I don't know, but I am disappointed at this stage that the professionalism may not have been as good as I would have preferred.
With the landfill deadline fast approaching, council is running out of time to resolve the issue, but Mayor John Kilpatrick agrees the problem needs urgent attention. One option under consideration is to rectify the water source, which could skyrocket the project budget by more than $500,000. As the flames spread quickly during the January bushfires, hundreds of firefighters bravely joined forces, but their efforts weren't without problems.
One of the major problems was communications, the ability to be able to talk to all the fire units on the fire ground, to be able to keep track of where they were and plot the fires and map them out on the fire front.
In future, this mobile operations unit will help. Today, a $10,000 donation from the Westpac Bank was handed over to Lake Macquarie Mayor John Kilpatrick, the money to be used on outfitting the vehicle.
It'll basically cover all the costs of the wiring, the installation of the equipment, the electronic equipment and the other ancillary items that needed to make it finished off.
When completed, the unit will be a welcomed addition.
It'll coordinate the communications on the major fire grounds, keep track of the weather, the locations of vehicles, when people have been fed and all those sorts of things, the logistics sides as well, so we can be a bit more efficient.